Hi guys, Michael Abaimi here. Today, I'd like to talk about representation in film, or more specifically, black representation in the recent string of live-action Disney remakes. So the various Hollywood studios have been on a crusade in recent years, judging by how hard they have been pushing diversity in their films. This is no doubt in response to accusations of whitewashing and decades of lack of proper representation for minorities and other groups. But like everything else in life, diversity is an area that should be handled with some level of nuance. After all, the goal of diversity in film is for them to more accurately mirror the real world, not to create false idealized depictions of what these filmmakers want the world to be. This is why the current overcompensation being done by studios has led to backlash from the fans of the various properties involved. For example, Disney dropped the first trailer for its forthcoming Little Mermaid live-action remake last year, and almost immediately, it was met with disdain and raised eyebrows because the filmmakers had chosen to cast Halle Bailey as Ariel, a character that was traditionally depicted as a redhead. To be honest, I have no problem with characters getting race swapped in movies, provided it serves the narrative the filmmakers are trying to tell. I mean, just look at a character like Nick Fury in the MCU, and how awesome Samuel L. Jackson's take on the character has been thus far. The problem with The Little Mermaid, however, is that it is clear that its main selling point is the fact that its main character is now black. And that in itself is not a good enough reason for anyone to get excited about the film. They are defending this by saying it allows young black girls to see themselves in the movie. But to that, I say that Little Mermaid was one of my favorite Disney animated films while growing up, and I can relate with Ariel's plight during the movie despite being a young Nigerian boy, so this line of reasoning does not make any sense to me. The whole thing is kind of ridiculous because here in Nigeria, mermaids are considered the likes of demons and they are even referred to as Mami Water in our culture, which is something that kids are taught to fear and run away from a very early age. Despite all that, I was still able to watch a movie centered around a mermaid that was a girl that happened to be white and a redhead at the same time, and I could still relate with that character. So this just proves that you don't really need to see yourself in the movies you're watching. Like this whole idea of representation being this goal that is going to make the viewers to see themselves and therefore inspire them. To me, it doesn't really make sense. Some of my biggest heroes growing up were characters that were not black, and I could still relate with those characters. I could still see the good in those characters. I could still aspire to emulate the qualities of those characters. So, but all that said, it doesn't mean that, yes, they shouldn't strive to have more representation in their films and everything. It's just the way that it's currently being trumpeted has gotten on people's nerves. I mean, just look at a film like Black Panther, for example. Like, this was a film that was considered to be like a pivotal moment for filmmaking, and the fact that it had a black lead and a predominantly black cast, and the way they went about it, they made it sound like this was the first time this was happening, when we already had black superheroes like Spawn, that was played by Michael J. White, and even Blade, that was played by Wesley Snipes. And if you go even further, you had films like Medium Man with a predominantly black cast. So I didn't really understand why Black Panther was all of a sudden this watershed moment that we hadn't seen before. So it's just clear that the current agenda, as they call it, to push diversity is not coming from a place of purity. Because if they were actually that concerned to see more black representation in their films, then Disney could have easily decided to adapt The Princess and the Frog instead. I mean, this was a cartoon that came out, had a predominantly black cast of characters, and it was well received. In fact, it was considered like a continuation of the Disney Renaissance, and up to now, we've not gotten a live action adaptation of that. So my question is, why is that not being done? Like, we already have the stories, original stories that have black characters at their center. Why not adapt those ones? Instead, they choose to go the lazy route and just race swap a character that was white before, like the case of Little Mermaid. And even more recently, they just dropped a trailer for the new Peter Pan and Wendy. And of course, I wasn't surprised to find out that Tinkerbell has now been race swapped to a black character. So this whole trend just needs to end. Like, it just needs to end. It needs to die. It has become disingenuous at this point. Like, it doesn't add anything to the movies. It doesn't suddenly make the movies any better, or it doesn't do anything but just show people that all you care about is to pander to an audience that doesn't really care about these things. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, what makes a character memorable is how well written the character is, how well acted that character was by the person portraying the character, not the color of their skin. A character shouldn't be defined by the color of their skin. You can't say because the character is black, all of a sudden the character has like this additional layer of, I don't even know what to call it. Like, the character is all of a sudden special now. So needless to say, I'm not going to be watching The Little Mermaid when it releases in the cinema, because I'm an advent believer of voting with your wallet. And if you see something that you don't like, you see a particular trend that is going on in movies that you don't like, then the way to send the message is by choosing not to watch it or choosing not to consume that particular product. The good news is that May is already kind of a stacked month as it is, because we have movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and even to an extent Fast X. I'm not the biggest Fast and the Furious fan, but that's even a movie I'm willing to watch ahead of watching The Little Mermaid. But I'm genuinely curious to see how the movie does, because all their live action remakes have been either hit or miss in my opinion. There are some that I've actually enjoyed, like for example I really liked Aladdin, because Aladdin actually added something to the story. Like, it actually showed us a side of the characters that we didn't really get to explore in the original. While on the other end of the spectrum, we had something like The Lion King, which was almost a shot-for-shot recreation of what we already had in the 1994 classic. And the result was just soulless. So that one, I didn't really enjoy it. So I'm actually curious to see how this particular one is going to fare. And even the new Peter Pan and Wendy, although that one is going directly to Disney+, so obviously the goal is not for them to make any kind of like bank on the movie, but rather to show how diverse the new cast is. You would think they would have learned their lesson with the performance of movies like Lightyear last year and even Strange World, because these were two movies that from the get-go, from looking at the trailers, it was clear that these movies only had one thing in mind, and that was to show just how progressive their animated movies have become. Especially something like Lightyear, which, number one, I didn't even get to watch in the cinema because it was banned over here in Nigeria, because they insisted on including the gay kiss that was touted and all this. And while I am all for inclusion and being progressive, I still feel it should be done with a measure of nuance, like I said in the beginning. Because audiences are smart enough to tell when a movie exists solely to push a message. And this is not why we go and watch all these films. We don't go to a movie expecting to be lectured or expecting to be told how to think or expecting to be converted or whatever. Like, we go into these movies because movies as an art form is a form of escapism. Like, it's a form of escape for a lot of people. And when you go into a movie, the last thing you are expecting or the last thing you want is for the movie to be lecturing you, for the movie to be shoving a particular ideology down your throat. Which is why I just pine for the old days of movies where the movie itself was the sole focus of the film. Like, the movie just had to exist on its own merits. It wasn't a case of including all these things just so that they are going to get pats on the back and all that. Like, all they cared about was telling a competent story and telling it competently. Anyway, these are just my thoughts on the current trend of race swapping in Disney live action remakes. What do you think about the forthcoming Little Mermaid live action remake and even the new Peter Pan and Wendy? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.